Throughout the ages, Portugal has been renowned for various endeavors. From the Iberian Union to the establishment of settlements in the Azores and Madeira to the colonization of Brazil, the Portuguese have demonstrated a diverse range of skills over the centuries. However, one aspect in which they excelled was exploration. The narrative of Vasco da Gama serves as a prime illustration. Vasco da Gama was born in the municipality of Sines in 1460, the son of Estevão da Gama and Isabel Sodré. Estevão was affiliated with the Order of Santiago and held prominence within the local community, while Vasco's mother's family had ties to the Order of Christ and enjoyed significant connections. Although details about the future explorer's childhood are scarce, it is known that he initially chose to follow in his father's footsteps and join the Order of Santiago, a decision that would prove beneficial in the future. At this juncture, John II of Portugal had ascended to the throne and held a growing affinity for the order. Additionally, he developed a particular fondness for Vasco da Gama, which fostered a sense of trust and ultimately paved the way for da Gama's career as an explorer. One of John II's primary objectives was to expand the royal treasury. While trade across Africa had been lucrative for the Portuguese, it fell short of satisfying the monarch's ambitions. John had his eyes fixed on Asia and the lucrative spice trade, which had already been exploited by his European counterparts. However, at this juncture, the spice trade was monopolized by the Venetians, who had established their own intricate network of routes for transporting goods. Meanwhile, John was contemplating innovative strategies to bypass the Venetian monopoly. His solution? To seek a route to Asia by sailing entirely around the African continent. This is where Vasco da Gama would prove invaluable. However, before his involvement, the king initiated some preliminary measures. Two spies, Pera da Covilha and Afonso de Paiva, were dispatched on an overland journey to gather intelligence on the state of the spice trade routes to India. Meanwhile, a captain named Bartolomeo Dias was sent by sea to ascertain the feasibility of John's ambitious plan. Fortunately for the ambitious monarch, Dias successfully navigated around the Cape of Good Hope, venturing as far as Fish River. His expedition confirmed the existence of a navigable sea route around Africa, providing evidence that John's aspirations were indeed feasible. Now on to the next phase. King John II required an explorer, and Vasco da Gama was the monarch's chosen candidate. On July 8, 1497, he embarked on his journey with a fleet comprising 4 ships: the São Gabriel, São Rafael, Berrio, and an additional unidentified vessel. The expedition consisted of a total of 170 crewmen and set sail from the Portuguese city of Lisbon. Accompanying the expedition were highly skilled navigators including Afonso Gonçalves, João de Coimbra, Pero de Alenquer, and Pedro Escobar. Despite the arduous and lengthy nature of the journey, King John had ensured that only the most proficient individuals were selected for the task. The initial stretch of the voyage traversed familiar waters, navigating past Tenerife and the Cape Verde Islands before reaching Sierra Leone. From there, the fleet ventured south across the equator, endeavoring to follow the path previously charted by Dias. After 3 months and covering a distance of 6,000 miles, the fleet briefly landed on the African coast before resuming their course along the route initially explored by Dias. The subsequent segment of da Gama's journey, however, would lead through seas that remained uncharted by Europeans. By the first week of March 1498, the expedition had arrived at Mozambique Island. Following a brief sojourn in the area, hostility from the locals compelled da Gama and his fleet to resume their journey. However, as they departed, da Gama made a dramatic exit by ordering his cannons to be fired back onto the island. Next, the fleet arrived at the port of Mombasa the following month, only to encounter hostility once again. They swiftly departed from the area in response to the aggression they faced. Opting to bypass Mombasa, da Gama decided to anchor at Malindi, where he and his crew were fortunately greeted with hospitality. They arrived on April 14th and remained there until April 24th, utilizing the expertise of an experienced pilot familiar with the local waters to guide them on the final leg of their journey to Calicut. And so Da Gama and his ships set sail for India. The expedition ultimately reached land near Calicut at Kapad on May 20th, 1498. Upon learning of their arrival, the king of Calicut, also known as the Zamorin, decided to return from his residence in Ponani to ascertain the identity and intentions of his foreign visitors. The Portuguese were welcomed with kindness and courteous hospitality, yet the gifts they presented to the king fell short of his expectations. Furthermore, the influence of nearby Muslim traders, particularly after Da Gama informed the monarch that they were seeking Christians and spices, began to sway the Zamorin's opinion. The rival traders informed the king that Da Gama was actually a deceitful pirate, masquerading as a representative of the Portuguese king. The rapport between Da Gama and the Zamorin soured swiftly, leading to the Portuguese departing from India on August 29th with a tinge of disappointment lingering. Nonetheless, the expedition had achieved its primary objective to some extent. It had conclusively demonstrated that India could be accessed via the sea route around Africa. However, Da Gama was eager to return home, a task that proved even more arduous than the voyage to India. This time, the monsoon winds were not in their favor, hindering their progress as they sailed back to Portugal. The journey across the Indian Ocean took an additional 109 days compared to the outbound voyage. The Barrio was the first of the ships to reach Lisbon on July 10, 1499. The São Gabriel would follow shortly after, yet Da Gama himself did not arrive in Portugal until late August. He chose to remain with his severely ill brother on Santiago Island, while his ship was escorted back to Lisbon by João. The fate of the other two ships was grim, as they never made it home. Only 55 out of the 170 crewmen would return safely. Da Gama was hailed as a hero by his nation, and his achievement was widely celebrated. However, there was also a notable setback in his journey. Da Gama had failed to secure any form of commercial treaty with the king of Calicut. However, he did manage to return with valuable Indian spices and other goods, which kept the crown's enthusiasm for potential trade opportunities alive. Subsequently, this paved the way for the Portuguese India Armadas. The Portuguese India Armadas became an annual event, navigating through Da Gama's newly established route, which came to be known as the India Run. The second of these expeditions was launched in 1500 under the command of Pedro Álvares Cabral. Its primary objective was to essentially carry on the mission initiated by Da Gama, aiming to secure a treaty with the Zamorin. Once again, this endeavor ended in failure as armed conflict erupted between Calicut and the Portuguese. By 1502, during the Fourth India Armada, Da Gama insisted on leading the charge himself. This proposition was accepted, and Da Gama was resolute in his determination to finally accomplish his mission and gain the upper hand over the Zamorin. Accompanied by his cousin, 2 uncles, and brothers-in-law, along with 15 ships and 800 men, Da Gama was prepared for vengeance. Upon the fleet's return to Calicut, Zamorin showed a willingness to negotiate a potential commercial treaty. However, Da Gama was already too consumed by his desire to avenge his previous failure. When his demands for the expulsion of all Muslims from Calicut were rejected, the explorer and his men resorted to brutal measures. They besieged the unfortified city for 2 consecutive days, committing atrocities on crewmen from local vessels they captured. Zamorin attempted to retaliate by sea, but his navy was swiftly defeated by the Portuguese, who were well prepared for such confrontations. However, Da Gama's actions suggest that he prioritized his personal goals over the interests of the Portuguese crown. In 1503, the fleet departed Calicut without securing a commercial treaty, leaving behind a small contingent to continue bombarding the kingdom and disrupting local trade. This misstep, or possibly driven by Da Gama's self-serving tactics, signified the conclusion of his era as a Portuguese hero. Subsequently, the rest of his life unfolded rather unremarkably. He eventually secured the title of the Count of Vidigueira and attained the position of viceroy, albeit after resorting to the threat of defection to Castile, following numerous unsuccessful endeavors to regain the king's favor. However, even with the ascension of a new monarch, he faced an arduous journey to reclaim his former standing. Da Gama embarked on one last voyage to India in 1524, only to fall ill with malaria upon arrival. Tragically, he passed away on Christmas Eve of that year, marking the end of his illustrious legacy. While the controversy surrounding Vasco da Gama's actions during his second expedition to Calicut remains significant, there is undeniable recognition of the pivotal role played by his initial voyage in shaping the future of Portuguese trade and European exploration. Among the myriad contributions of the Portuguese nation to world history, the endeavors of Vasco da Gama in the Indian Ocean stand out as particularly significant.